For today's video, we are going to be returning to the topic of loot box style progression. And we're going to talk about why this works so well, but at the end of the day, how it does more harm than good when it comes to being a progression loop for a title. As I've said many times, we don't play too many loot box style games here on the channel, although I was thinking about installing BlueStacks and maybe doing some mobile games to show them off here, though I don't know how much you guys would want to see that. But loot boxes have been around now for a little, I think we're going to hit 20 years really soon in terms of their original implementation. And as the story goes, it was first seen in one of the EA FIFA style games, for this ability to unlock unique rewards and items that can help you, of course at the cost of spending money for each new role. And since then, loot boxes have evolved into a very major and lucrative part of game development. Whether you are making a mobile game, a free-to-play game, a AAA game, any game can make use of loot boxes these days. And with the kind of rise of the fervor surrounding monetization practices, and especially loot boxes last year, it's led to, again, these discussions about whether or not these systems are good or bad. During that whole discussion about loot box design, I got into an argument with some people on Gamasutra when someone was trying to reason with me that killing enemies in Diablo, Path of Exile, Grim Dawn, and getting loot drops from them is akin to opening up a loot box. The surprise mechanics, as we've heard time and time again. But very lately, I've been playing a mobile game in my, I guess again, quote-unquote spare time, and I've got to experience what real loot box style progression is. And it is most definitely not an example or the same thing as playing an ARPG. So I've been playing Marvel's Contest of Champions, which I guess that's a minor advertisement right here. And the game itself is built pretty much like, I would say 70-30 in terms of loot box to player skill in terms of progression. This is a game where all the upgrades and all the new champions that you get are entirely defined by loot box openings. And it's not just having one loot box. No. You have the different rarities for the champions, you have different loot boxes for getting gold and basic resources, different loot boxes for skill upgrades, different loot boxes for a catalyst you need to upgrade or rank up characters, loot boxes for special rewards, loot boxes to get duplicates of characters so that you can unlock or upgrade them even further. Essentially, anything that could be put into a loot box in this game, there's a loot box for it. It's both impressive and scary at the same time. So, for this first part of this video, I want to discuss why this works. Because at the end of the day, whether you love, hate, despise, or whatever with loot boxes, they are a very effective form of progression and monetization in just about any video game. The use of loot boxes, again, is to provide randomized progression. Again, while we all sneer at the term surprise mechanics, it really does work. People like surprises. We like to get random stuff out of nowhere. And loot boxes embody that perfectly. Because it's not just you clicking on something that says, you win this. No, you get all animation. You get like a spinning of an item. You get fireworks. In Call of Duty World War, I think 2 or whatever it was, the last one, they would literally rain down from the sky so that everyone around you can see what you get. And loot boxes along this kind, again, they're meant to give that sense of, oh my god, I don't know what's going to happen. But here's the bit of the trick here. That is all a lie. There is no, greater thing you can do to influence a loot box once you've clicked to open it. You've probably seen, or if you've looked up free-to-play or loot box style games and you have YouTubers or streamers play them, they're screaming and praying and making all kinds of weird faces as the animation plays or the roulette wheel spins or whatever. That does nothing. The second you click a loot box in a game, the game has already determined what you're going to get. Everything else surrounding it is entirely filler. It is the smoke and mirrors to keep you excited. In Marvel Contest of Champions, what they do is they show roulette at the bottom of the screen every time you go to open up a crystal that shows the possible rewards. And those possible rewards are shuffled. So if I open up, let's say, a 3-star crystal, I have a different pool of champions if I open up a second 3-star crystal. And it's a very, again, smart way of defining this. But like we've said, it is entirely fake allure or fake mystique. Now, the reason why randomized progression works is that it greatly, and I do mean greatly, extends the grinding and long-term progression of these games. Again, if we could just pick the very best champions or the very best gear, a lot of these games would be over very quickly, as we've seen with a lot of RPG-style games that just let us craft the very best stuff. And this kind of long-term progression also is a great way to show that scaling or that growth of the progression curve. In Contest of Champions, you start at 1 to 2 stars, you'll get your first 3-star, and then by completing the quest, you'll get your first 4-star, and then it's like, oh my god, I got this really great character. Or in my case, you get a character that sucks and doesn't help you. And by making it randomized, it also prevents players from actively knowing how long it's going to take to do anything. This, again, this plays into the pay-to-win aspects. Do you want to grind for months on end to hopefully afford enough loot boxes to get the great item or character? Or do you just want to spend $30, open up a 5 or 6-star crystal? By the way, I don't know if that's the actual cost. I did not look that up in the game. I didn't want to, shock myself too much. And just get one of the best characters. And this is the major point about randomized or loot box progression. That there are de facto best choices. Again, due to how the randomization works, it is very possible for somebody early in their career to pull a 5 or a 6-star character. I think it's like a 0.003% for some of these drops. But again, if you pray to the right RNG gods and sacrifice enough RNG goats, maybe it will happen to you. And when it does, all of a sudden, the progression in the game just kind of goes into hyperspeed. You get the right character drop in Contest of Champions early on, and that is going to infer so much on your progression through the game. And this is the big point and why this is so attractive, is that you get a really strong champion early. It means that you're able to do the quest a lot quicker. By doing the quest a lot quicker, it means you're able to save time and energy. By doing that, you'll get more rewards. And then, of course, by getting more rewards, it'll make it easier for you to do other stuff. And by playing the games like this, it affords or it allows so much of your progression to be built on this that it gives that attraction. So that it makes sense for somebody to spend $60, $90, $100, whatever, to get one 6-star champion, and then that will allow them to proceed so much faster. Now, of course, these games do allow free players to spend or to acquire these items through grinding, completing quests, etc. But again, it will never be as fast. And the discussion about the whole concept of the ratio of time to money, that is too big for this piece. So, before we switch over to the second half of our video, loot boxes embody, again, a lot of the elements of the same kind of randomized progression we see in ARPG design. When I'm playing an ARPG, I don't know what's going to drop. I could kill a random minion and get, common club. I could kill another minion and get the super legendary fiery lightning death Bringer of Chaos Sword +7. And that, again, gives that sense that you don't know what's going to happen. And when players are surprised in a good way, it keeps them invested in this game. If I know that I'm not going to get an upgrade for the next 30 hours of play, why the heck should I play that game for the next 30 hours? But if the game tells me that any time, at anywhere, something amazing and spectacular can drop, if the game doesn't give me any indication about when something's going to drop, and just says, just play the game for the next 30 hours, that's not going to motivate me. So if the game doesn't tell me that I'm going to get anything rewards for the next 30 hours, why should I play that game? But if at any point within those 30 hours something amazing or spectacular could drop, that's going to keep me invested to keep going. Now, with ARPG design, again, there are fixed events or known events that can happen that can also clue me into something amazing to drop. Again, in games like Diablo, Path of Exile, Grim Dawn, etc., whenever I fight a champion enemy, most likely I'm going to get at least an epic or higher comparative item drop. Sometimes I'll get a legendary or whatever the highest variant is. But I am being conditioned that if I see a champion fight or a group of elites, go kill those guys, and I may get something amazing. And with the randomized progression of ARPG design, because of how the loot tables are defined, it is entirely up in the air as to what can drop. This is one of the major differences between a loot box and the progression of an ARPG. Loot boxes are fixed characters. They are fixed gear, rank up gems, gold, crystals, stars, whatever you want to say. They are fixed elements. I know, and I've been watching some high level people play Contest of Champions. There are de facto best champions in that game regardless of their star rank. You get one of those to drop, and it's going to, again, be a completely different game. In ARPG, however, just because a rare item drops doesn't mean it's going to be naturally or automatically better than what I'm using. And a major point about about randomized progression in ARPG is about tailoring the items that drop to your skills, to wherever your passives are. It's not a case of enemy drops item, it's automatically better, case close. And that is going to be our point where we're going to switch over to our next piece of footage after this quick word to our Patreon supporters and sponsors, because I want to talk more about why the randomized progression, or even just progression loop in an ARPG, is not the same as the loot box style progression. And now for a quick shout out to our current Game Wisdom supporters and sponsors. Going forward, all Patreon supporters will get early access to our videos. And if you'd like to continue this discussion on game design, be sure to check out our Discord channel, linked down below. If you're looking for more wisdom about game design, be sure to check out my latest offering of books, 20 Essential Games to Study, aimed for first-time developers and students looking for some inspiration for their upcoming games, and Game Design Deep Dive Platformers if you're interested in anything regarding 2D and 3D platforming design. They're both available in print, digital, and wherever books are being sold. In the last part, we focused on random progression, or kind of the idea of loot boxes, wherein the gear or the drops are all hard-coded by developers. There is no real surprise in terms of what is available. And that is not the same as the kind of randomized progression and the core gameplay loop of an ARPG. Now, of course, the footage you're seeing right here is from Grim Dawn. And with ARPGs and their like, they do make use of randomized progression. I don't know what is going to drop at any time. And a key point about that is that no gear is hard-coded. As in, if I kill enemy A or open up treasure chest B, I know exactly what I'm going to get. Gear, as we talked about in our ARPG lecture, is procedurally generated. And that infers onto the core gameplay loop or into the general gameplay. If I get a really good weapon, or if I'm trying to figure out what to use, I need to compare that to what my character's build is. With this character, I went for a two-handed lifesteal focused strategy. So for me, if a really amazing weapon dropped, but that was ice spec, guess what? That's useless to this build. It can still be an amazing weapon, and chances are it probably is. But there is strategy, there is depth to the system beyond just pure numbers. When we talk about Lootbox and kind of the random progression, it is entirely built on that stat, on that upgrade. A 5-star character is going to be better than its 4-star equivalent or its 3-star. And getting a 6-star character in a gacha game, that is probably going to infer on so much of your strategy or change everything around, because nothing else you're going to have is going to be better than it. With ARPG design, all the loot boxes or the randomized or random progression, randomized, that is the correct term here, is built as a secondary system to the progression loop of the game. As we've played games like Grim Dawn, Path of Exile, and so on, we all know that getting gear is not the same as getting our upgrades or our stats and new powers. That's what defines your build. It doesn't matter if the greatest necromancer weapon drops in Diablo if I'm playing as a paladin or a barbarian. And this kind of depth allows all these systems to interact with each other. With loot box or random progression focused games, there is no greater system. There is no greater depth to how these things play out. Like I said, basically your strategy is hope to get a 6-star character and then let the chips fall where they may. In Grim Dawn here, I have to be constantly balancing what gear I'm getting, how does it apply to my current stats and abilities, my devotion tree, how does that apply, and then that has to be weighed with every piece of loot that's dropped. So that while I am getting randomized content or randomized progression, it still is being focused by what I've chosen. And another important point about this is that the randomized progression is not going to take the place of the game's other progression systems. This is why, again, that loot boxes as the only form of progression don't really work over the long run, because it is just about RNG and there's nothing greater to it. Again, you could play a loot box driven game for hours upon hours and get nothing, just as you could get a very lucky drop within minutes of loading up your character for a day. And that is not motivating. The key aspect of something like Grim Dawn here is that everything that I get that's randomly generated is going to be weighed with the actual gear that I'm using, so that at the end of the day, there is a greater sense of progression to this game. And if there wasn't, it's not going to keep somebody invested. So that while I am still looking forward to legendary gear in Grim Dawn, I'm also having the greater focus of the upgrading my mastery trees and getting to full rank there. So that while there is that randomized progression, I can focus on other aspects of the game. It's not just do or die based on RNG. And anyone who's played an ARPG style game will tell you that at the expert level, if you are relying entirely on RNG, you are not playing that game right. Because as we all know, RNG is kind of random. And with the randomness of RNG, the problem is that if your build relies entirely on loot to work, What happens if you're not getting those drops that you need? This again is the key problem with loot box driven games. That if I need a character drop A or a certain rarity in order to make any progress and I'm not getting that, guess what? All my time is being wasted because I can't do anything more in the game. And it's a problem that we see in pretty much any loot box driven title. That the further you play, the less opportunities for growth are going to present themselves. Because very simply, if at the beginning of the game there is a possibility of 500 drops, and you are now at the end game and there's now only the chance of you getting 20 new things, the chance of a loot box opening up that's going to help you is going to be greatly reduced. Even less than the actual percent chances that the drop rates may have. So if it says that you have a 0.75% chance to get a 6-star character, and you're trying to get something new other than your other 6 stars, guess what? It's even going to be less than a 0.6% chance there. And like we've said, this is why this kind of stuff just does not work over the long term. And as we've talked about before, milling resources is not a viable solution. Because again, the cost to mill to get higher quality stuff is also exponentially greater. So you're still going to be spending a lot of time that's going to be essentially wasted. And worse, if somebody decides to spend money and they're not getting what they need, they are now wasting money as well. And if somebody feels like they're losing money playing a game, they are going to leave it faster than you can say a loot box. To wrap things up for today, like we've talked about, randomized and random progression need to be tied regardless of whether you're using the procedural generation of ARPG or the random rewards of a loot box, have to be tied to other game systems. By themselves, there's not enough value over the long term to keep somebody invested. The player needs to be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel. What are they aiming for in terms of their character, their build, their account, you name it. And you need to be able to give the player something concrete. Now, some games, again, will have fixed chances for rare stuff to happen. Again, in Grim Dawn here, when I'm fighting bosses like this guy, or elites, that when they die, I know something amazing is going to drop. So I can build up the anticipation for it. If something drops that I can't use, I can at least rely on my skills in the other systems. With the loot box driven games, especially those that are just pure RPG kind of combat, again, it doesn't matter how great my skill is. If all I have are 2 to 3 star characters, and the game is throwing 6-star characters at me, guess what? There is no amount of getting good that is going to get me through that. And when we have our talk further about Contest of Champions, I have some really big examples of that I want to share, but that's beyond the scope of this video. For those of you watching this right now, I know a few of you are working on this yourselves. What are your thoughts about random and randomized progression? How do you keep it so the player doesn't feel like they're wasting money or wasting time on that game? And can you think of great examples of titles, not ARPGs as we've covered them already, that manage to provide really great random progression or randomize? Let me know in the comments below, but thanks for watching. Check out our Discord and Patreon link down below, and come back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Until next time, take care. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoy things, be sure to do all the liking and subscribing that the kids are doing these days. Check out our Discord channel link down below, where we hang out and chat game design, and come back later tonight for our regular streamings. But that's it, and tune in for more great content here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games.